Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good evening. Welcome, everyone. We are going to change from our normal routine tonight. We are going to move into, obviously, we had the special election, so we need to swear in two council members, one new and one just a little older. Not much. Not much. So with that, Luke, who do you want to start with, sir?
Ladies first.
Ladies first.
All right, so as Luke's coming up, 1968.
Anybody
Touchdown call.
anybody that wants to take pictures, if you want to come up here, feel free to come behind us. Don't go anywhere you'd like. Now you can do your.
So 1968 was the first time that Luke swore somebody in, so he's sworn in everybody since 1968.
Well, I am
So there you go.
honored.
Before you were born.
A little bit, but I won't tell you what year I was born.
Not 1968. No.
Would you raise your right hand, please? I, Taylor Hubbard,
I, Taylor Hubbard,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
the duties of the office of Councilperson Ward 2
the duties of Office Person Council Ward 2
in the city of Chaska,
in the city of Chaska,
of the county of Carver,
in the county of Carver,
and state of Minnesota,
the state of Minnesota,
to which I have been elected
to which I have been elected,
to the best of my knowledge and ability, so help me God.
to the best of my knowledge and ability, so help me God.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
And after Mike is done, we'll just take a little short recess so you can get all the pictures you
fine.
want.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Taylor, come on up. Yep. Yep. You are official. You are official now.
All right,
Would you raise your right hand, please? I, Mike Wong,
I, Mike Wong,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
the duties of the office of Councilperson Ward 4
the duties of the office of Councilperson Ward 4
in the city of Chaska,
in the city of Chaska,
of the county of Carver,
of the county of Carver,
and the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
to which I have been elected,
to which I've been
to
elected,
the best of my knowledge and ability, so help me God.
to the best of my knowledge and my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations again.
I thought I was the only one to get sworn in twice in 1 year, and now Mike tied me.
One's yours.
All right, with that, Mike in the back, we're gonna take just, and anybody watching, we're gonna take a short recess to allow families to take some pictures and do whatever, and we will be back shortly, so.
Just right, you want-
You guys? Say what's never.
Well, it's when you're the three, like terribly, three-nager or whatever you call it.
Did you say yes?
Right on this then, huh? Bring mine.
Okay, welcome back. Thanks for that, and we are all set to go. With that, Nate, will you call roll?
Yes, Councilmember Hatfield,
Here?
Councilmember Hubbard,
Here.
Councilmember Wong. Here. Councilmember Grau.
Here.
And Mayor Winchell.
Here. We'll move on to adopting the agenda. Are there corrections or additions to the agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to do so.
Motion to adopt agenda?
Second?
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield, second by Councilmember Wang to adopt the agenda. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries. Moves us on to item number 6, visitor presentation. Anyone here under visitor presentation? All right, one of you two come up here. Where are you from? No, you gotta come up here. Microphone can't pick you up. Oh, boy, that's delegation.
Little switcheroo.
Yeah, we're both from Holy Family. We're both sophomores. We're taking AP Gov, so we have to do like an assignment for civic participation where we have to do 4 hours worth of government participation, whether it be like a city council meeting or writing on with the sheriff and stuff like that. Do that.
What's his name?
Parker Ganas,
And what's your name?
Patrick Mulhern.
Okay. 4 hours you need, it'll be perfect. That's about
Yeah.
what tonight's meeting is.
All right, okay. It'll be good.
Assume you're gonna hang, right?
Yeah.
Because there's not much school left. There's not another council meeting. So you're gonna stay for the 4?
Yeah.
All right. All right, we're good. Thanks for coming.
At least somebody will be here 4 hours from
Yeah.
now.
If I'm here 4 hours, shoot me, please. All right, I probably shouldn't have that. Can't say those things anymore. With that, no one else's visitor presentation, so we'll move on. Consent agenda items. These are items that we need to have approval on, but not necessarily conversation. But anything can be brought to up for questioning. So with that, if there are no questions, I would entertain a motion.
I just have a comment.
Okay.
No further questions. Just a couple things always catch my eye. I live on Big Woods Boulevard, so, checking the landscape agreement, I think we saw a lot of trees disappear in this last couple of weeks as they're kind of clearing the right-of-ways and the easements. So it's kind of exciting to see that. And then I can't go without saying that approving the Ice Cream Princess permit is great. She visits our neighborhood. You play the sound, the kids come running, so it's a favorite that we're already excited for in the neighborhood. So I was glad to see that we will approve that, so my kids can be happy and get their ice cream, and maybe myself as well.
There you go.
See, I'm just going to interject here. Did I miss it, or have we approved the agenda? I'm sorry, the meeting minutes? Did we?
Oh, agenda, yes, I'm not
Agenda,
sure.
but the meeting minutes?
I don't have it on my thing.
We don't have it on there, yeah.
It's not on here.
Oh,
So it's
not-
probably on here.
Yeah.
Yep, I'll have to go in there.
do it after the consent.
You do it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What's that?
Oh, yeah.
He's a little slow, but nice catch.
Well, yeah, it's right after visitor presentation on here.
All right, I'm not there yet. All right, so we're already, now I'm confused.
I was just giving
We're
a
in
shout out to
consent,
Ice Cream,
okay,
yep.
we're in consent, so, is there anything else? Anyone else have a question? And did you make a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the
So,
consent.
motion by Councilmember, Gra,
I'll second.
no. Second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Hubbard. There,
Gotta get my name in the
gotta get your names in there, otherwise they'd never know you were here.
Yeah,
It's always important.
thank you.
All right, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries. Now we will do, looking for approval of the previous meeting minutes. Again, discussion or corrections, if not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the previous.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wang to approve the previous meeting minutes. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same sign. Motion carries. Now we move into our big action item. Adopt ordinance 965, amending chapter 13 alcoholic beverages.
I'm going to turn this over to Nate.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just pulling up the staff report here. So, Mayor, council members, this is a change that we're proposing to the ordinance, chapter 3 for alcoholic beverages. I was going to accomplish a couple things. So one is to add the ability to establish what we would call a, I want to make sure I get the right term here, community festival. So that would be for things like the farmer's market, might be an example. Fire and Ice could be another example of a situation where we might want to do that. So that the entity that is overseeing that community festival, as it's declared, then has the ability to bring in servers of alcoholic beverages, so folks who want to be selling that. What the key there is that it would open it up to anyone who holds a license within the city to sell alcohol, would then be able to come to that community festival, at their invitation of the organizers, to then be able to sell the alcohol. So that currently today, it's limited to nonprofit and community organizations like the Lions do that at River City Days, for an example, or at Taste of Chaska. If you're not a nonprofit, so if you're a for-profit alcohol seller, you're not able to do that at a community event today. So by
This
creating
change would allow that.
This would allow for that. So, places like Shram, or, a restaurant. So as we're doing like Second Street Block Party, for an example, and we want to have, booths up for some of the restaurants that are downtown if they want to be able to serve, I don't know, a margarita or something like that in the case of Patron out on the street, they could then have that opportunity to do that. Or if Shram wants to be at the farmer's market or at Fire and Ice or something like that, they would have the opportunity to do that and sell, the beer that they're producing. So those are the types of things that we've been receiving requests about. This would be an opportunity to allow that to happen. And to keep in mind, this is limited to, sellers who currently have a license within the city. So if you've got a group that's from outside of the city, there would be a different process that they would need to be able to go through in order to even, participate there, so.
I had a question, just for clarification. On section 97, on item D, it says no compensation of any nature may be exchanged for the beer, wine, or 3.2% malt liquor. That didn't mean that, that they couldn't charge for the alcohol. Am I correct, or?
I'm going to pull up.
Sure, no, that's okay. And it says compensation for purposes of this section include donation, advance sale of tickets and tips, and the payment of any kind or nature to the host in exchange for said wine, beer, or 3.2% malt liquor.
Is that referring to, Nate, the, in the community center?
Section 97, it's like, it's on the second page of, down at the very, very bottom.
Yeah, so that's a little bit different. So this is a different change. So there's two changes that are occurring
Okay.
to this ordinance.
Okay,
The first one is what I was just talking about, to be able to allow for the community festival
Sure.
provision in there, which then allows for the sales like I was talking about. The second is some changes to areas that we define in ordinance that are eligible for alcohol to be consumed at the community center. So this would be in line with special events that are happening at the community center, like a wedding or a party of some sort. Sometimes there's activities going on in the theater, and then outside in the gallery area, there may be a wine and dine type situation that would make sense with that event. So that's what this has to do with. In that case, it wouldn't be for sale, it would be provided as a part of the event.
yeah, like an open bar
Right.
concept?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. So that's why it's a little bit different. Currently today, we allow it in the community room, not in the ice arena. I'm trying to think, there's one other location.
I think that's the only place.
Yeah, I think it's
Community
on.
room in the ice,
on
in the
what
ice
it said.
arena. Yep, and so What we're adding to that is the gallery space, which is outside the theater.
Oh, okay.
Because there have been situations where there's an event going on in the theater and people want to be able to sort of do that wine and dine thing, you know, with the art around it.
Yep.
Or maybe there's just an art, you know, gallery that, that's going on that would make sense to do that. And also in the sunroom, which is the space that's right outside of the community center, or I'm sorry, outside of the community room where there's a bunch of windows. It's kind of an extension of the community room, so it would make sense, you know, for weddings that are of, you know, maybe a large enough scale, or they want to use that space too, that you'd be able to have that sort of activity occurring out there. This doesn't give the ability for anyone to come in and, you know, crack open a beer and, you know, have that going on. It has to be with the event. You know, the individual is renting out the space. There's a process that is gone through to allow that then. So that's the intent of this ordinance change, is one, creating an opportunity for the community event to be declared and for the sales to occur with that. And then two, making some changes with our community center and where alcohol can be consumed.
So quick follow-up question to the one that was asked earlier. So that means that a open bar could be had for like a wedding or some function, but you couldn't have a cash bar, right? Because then you'd be exchanging
Correct.
money.
That's
for
how
Yeah,
I read
that's
it,
what it
yes.
looked like. That was,
Yeah, because typically what you have with there, you have caterers that have a liquor license with, and it's usually included as part of the event.
Exactly.
So they couldn't bring their own cases of beer and give them away. It has to be done. Because they
no,
still
I
would
think
have to be a
just
licensed
can't
person to give out the alcohol, correct?
Let me see here.
Because I think it said that, but it just talks
Yeah.
about wine, beer, and 3-2 may be served in the community center. But
Yeah,
it's
it
served
says-
pursuant of Article 4, Section 96, which I don't really know what that means.
we'll go one up and talks about the holder of the annual retail on sale. So it looks like it has to be a
license
license.
first.
Yep.
Because the only thing that scares me a little bit about the gallery room, which I think is a nice place to have it, but what prevents me walking in there and going up and getting, I mean, are they gonna use like a wristband system so that they know that the people are, I mean, is that, and I don't know if that's something we should put in there, that they need to have something like that, I don't know how much of a problem it is, but it could be if somebody just goes in there and starts,
Are you talking about like minors?
like a party crasher.
Oh,
And yes, and a minor
Okay.
could do that if they're really not a
Checking
good
ID.
system of how they're doing that.
you said that they allow for alcohol in the community room as it exists?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Well,
that-
the community room though is really kind of confined, but the gallery, you're just kind of wandering about and people are coming in that entrance and can walk through that unless that'll be closed off. That's my only thing about walking through there and, yeah, I just, I don't know.
I think that's a good point. I think what I'll do is I'll follow up with the folks who are renting out that space and understand how, you know, how that would work. And maybe there's already something in place, but if there's not, then I think it would be important that
I
we're
mean, it would be
considering that
just,
question.
if, say somebody had already had a number of drinks and came in there and said, oh, look at there,
Right.
and then has an accident or something, how does that all play out? He wasn't
the-
even part of the party then, you know, I don't know, and maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but, I just worry about it because of,
Liability?
well, yeah, I mean, just the kids and everybody that can walk through
Mm-hmm.
that space. You know, where the community room, you knew was a closed event and they'd have to walk, you know, it's a little different, I don't know.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think what we can do is work on, you know, our procedures when we are renting out that space and when there is an event that would be doing that, to make sure that the proper, you know, provisions, so whether it be a wristband or a hand stamp or something, a ticket, something along those lines, just to make sure that there's some exchange that's occurring
Right.
to make sure that the right people are,
Yeah,
well, that the alcohol's not getting in the wrong hands, right?
Right.
So-
Yeah, I just want to make a clarification, though. It is not true that it has to be a licensed caterer that's providing it. It's, this is not a whole lot different than, when you have, we've seen it with like events like the Ryder Cup and stuff, where you might have a party at your house, you can't sell liquor,
Right.
it has to be part of the event. It's the people providing the event, so under section C, it said wine, beer, or 3.2 malt liquor must be provided by the person, organization, or group hosting the activity or event. So it could be provided by the people who are actually hosting that event, but it becomes, like Luke was pointing out to me, it becomes their responsibility to know, you know.
The rules of how to do it.
Yeah, and who they're serving it to. And I think that's a point we can bring up when we're talking about the actual implementation of this at the community center, is making sure we have a plan in place
I
to
just
make
think
sure
that
we
would be-
feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, currently, do they have to get like some sort of certificate of liability or in regards to having alcohol or a
Yeah.
deposit down or
Yep.
something?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Because, you know, I'm reading here, like, it kind of doesn't make sense, because I read here, it says a fee of $50 per day is required for a temporary license to a club or charitable, religious, or other nonprofit organization in existence of at least 3 years.
Yeah, that's the other one. That's the festival, community festival. The community center is down below section 97.
Maybe I just keep reading them together, that it's all one, but. I
Yeah,
guess it's-
section 97 is all on the community center. The stuff above is all the community festival.
Okay.
So definitely with the community festival, they have to have a liquor license because they're selling. So they aren't treated any different than they are if they're selling on their establishment.
So the way this is set up, someone could, you know, like if, or even today, if someone had a event, they could go to like, they could go to the community room, grab their beverage, and then they could walk around the community center somewhere else. They couldn't,
No.
they have to stay in
They
that
have to
area.
stay there.
Okay, so that means that what we're doing is basically allowing both serving of the beverage and consumption of beverage within those rooms.
Yep.
So, Mr. Mayor, is the question here is the concern is that the possible consumption in the gallery, or the possible receiving of the beverage in the gallery, because that's too open of a space with too much traffic.
Well, I just worry, that can be a main entrance into it.
Right.
And I just, you know, as long as they're watching out, the drunk people aren't getting it. I don't even know if it'd be a problem, but I just.
I think what we do is we put it into our policies and guidelines at the community center for renting of the facility, that, you know, looking at where's the logical place to set up? What kind of safeguards do you have to have in place to make sure that you're not, I think we can accomplish that through our
I
policies.
just worry about if, say, they had the bar right by the theater.
Yep.
You know, if they put the bar back by the glass, that would be, you know, a little bit further out of the way and a little less obvious, so.
Yep.
But now that, so now I am in Article 97. So that can only be wine, and now is that strong beer? Or because then it goes, or 3.2 beer. So is it, can they have any kind? Or is it just 3.2?
Intoxicating liquor or 3.2. So intoxicating liquor includes
A gin and tonic.
your, yeah,
So you can have,
or, you know, like a normal beer, a
Yeah.
non-3.2 beer.
but where is that saying that in 97? I read wine, beer, and 3.2%
Same
malt
here.
liquor.
I think is that one of the ones above?
The other one I can
So-
believe,
Yeah,
but in 97, it just says
wine, beer.
wine, beer, and 3.2. Now, does that mean regular beer can be served and 3.2?
Yes.
So,
Somebody's going to define it that way. I mean, that's the way it's written right now, is that you could serve all three of those.
and that is legal to serve regular beer? Mm-hmm. Okay. Because, I mean.
It's really, are we,
And
it's
the
really,
reason
are
I'm
we
kind
going
of
to allow
questioning
it?
is like 3.2 is going away. Minnesota's the
No.
last state that has it.
No.
So the state of Minnesota will be defining alcohol pretty soon anyways. But to me, that's not, well, as long, if beer is okay, then that's okay. Because I was gonna say, that would open the door to me to say anything can be sold. And I always thought we could only sell 3.2. That's why if you're not a bar owner, I thought that's all you could do. And I know this is giveaway, so that's different. Okay. Is there any concerns about, so the first part, the community festivals, about hurting the nonprofits?
You kind of mentioned it's still at the invite of the festival, so they could ultimately protect that, I would think.
Yes, so that, because we're not operating like River City Days, we're not operating Taste of Chaska, the Chamber or River City Days Committee can still choose who they want to have in there, so it'll still be their choice. Where I think this is gonna be most applicable right off the get-go is the farmer's market. Because the Chamber is expressed, and the Downtown Business Alliance has expressed the desire to have places like Schramm actually be down at the event.
Okay.
But it's still gonna be up to, it's not saying that they have the right to do it, it's saying that if they're invited to be part of that, they can get a license to do it.
As long as, like I said, I just know that, our nonprofits and our community groups are so strong here, and I certainly don't want to knock anything or take anything away from those organizations.
I would think it's kind of like how the League of Women Voters does soda and water. Anybody could sell those things, but they kind of keep it just to them. The community organizers do, so I
But
think,
River City Days was initially set up as only nonprofit sell,
yeah.
So I don't know if that's, so, okay.
Not to pivot, but in the case of like the farmer's market, what are the laws on open bottle, like in those kind of, events?
So they'd have to keep it within the defined areas of
Okay.
the actual festival itself.
Couldn't go walking.
Yeah, couldn't just
park
go
with
walking
it
down
or
the street.
something? Okay.
One of the things from a practical matter, I think, and we really saw this at the 19th hole event when it was over here, is what you tend to see is, groups like the Lions are serving much lower alcohol concentration of beer. And the people who drink that are very different than the people who drink the higher concentration of alcohol and beer. And so personally, I think they're very complementary to each other, and I actually think that you probably end up selling more in general with those options.
It would probably bring additional citizens excited about other vendors,
Yes.
but still
Yeah.
engaging with nonprofit.
Yeah, it's what the Lions have sold has been very different than what a craft brewery would sell at a tent.
Okay.
And to the question of being able to walk anywhere, it does say in the ordinance that the group that's hosting the event would need to designate location where the beer is to be, or the alcohol is to be sold and then also consumed. So I think there's discussion to be had about, for any particular event, about where that makes sense. So, is it the full area that the event is taking, or is it some subsection of that area that maybe you're fencing off an area or something like that? That's part of that discussion of how that would go.
All right, other questions? What's your thoughts?
Can you make a motion?
Yeah, if you're ready, if you want to make a motion, or
Unless
you,
anyone wants to discuss some more.
I'm not hearing anything.
Yep, so I'll make a motion to adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 3 alcoholic beverages with the new section relate to community festivals upon effective publication of the amended ordinance in the Chaska Herald.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Wang,
Second?
second by Councilmember Hatfield, adopting ordinance 965, amending Chapter 3 of the alcoholic beverages. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moves us on to bills. Anyone have a question on a bill? Go ahead.
Okay, let's see. So, page 2, there is a line item for under Aldi for builder's deposit refund. I'm guessing a reference.
Yep.
It's like for 50,000.
Yeah,
right?
so basically with each development that we have, we require a deposit for things like landscaping and things like that. So that if they don't finish up, we have something to draw against to actually finish that up for them. Once we actually go and do the inspection and see that they've met the requirements, we refund that back to them.
Okay, so that's just a good learning thing for me
Yep.
here, so.
I asked the same question over email to him, so that's why I was laughing.
We were gonna say it was $50,000 of apples
Like,
for,
wow, that's a lot of money to get all these.
That's a lot of like biscotti or
Yeah,
something, you
yeah.
know? Let's see, so on page 4, under Bolton and Menk, we have City Square Park. It looks like archaeology, is that right?
you know,
So what's exactly that for, since, you know, City Square Park, I mean, we're pretty well defined there.
yeah, so basically this has to do with the street reconstructions around the park. Because there is identified burial mounds in the park, there has to be archaeological studies around it to make sure that there's nothing else being disturbed.
Okay.
As part of that. And so, you know, that isn't the section of road that we're doing this year. It's for a future project. So it's basically preparing to make sure that there's not anything that we have to be concerned about there.
Okay.
I'm going to add to that a little bit. So the park itself is on our CIP list for, was it a year or two from now? And so this summer, we do intend to go through some planning work about how the park could be redone. And so this is prep work for that, because we need to understand, you know, where are sacred grounds, you know, where are there burial sites, and where are there maybe other archaeologically significant sites that can't be disturbed because of that. And so then that helps us to start scope out what's the realm of possibility for that park. There may be areas where we simply can't touch, and so, you know, that certainly narrows down what our ability is to do within the park itself too, so.
Okay.
So did they physically check the park?
No. But they did. They are physically, I mean,
Oh,
you
they
have to
would-
sort
they
of
will be.
understand you know, they sort of go through, like with the environmental, they go through sort of like a phase 1 and a phase 2 type of report. Phase 1 is really doing research on items that are out there that help identify things that have been sort of record kept over the years. The second phase ends up going and actually doing more like actual in-the-ground investigation. The in-the-ground investigation has been limited at this point to the street area to make sure that the limits aren't beyond the park boundaries of where there may have been burial mounds.
Okay. Okay. On page 6, I see Chaska cabinetry and millwork. There were some repairs for upstairs kitchen. Just kind of curious about that one.
That actually is in relation to, actually at the fire station. So we actually received, actually Denise got it for us, a grant to improve employee break spaces. It was actually through the public health department. And one of them was actually, they were able to get a nice like eating table that actually has like the Chaska Fire logo on it. That was nice. So it was it was Chaska Mill that actually made that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then this last one, I think I know what it's for, but just double checking. Under like page 12, J. Gardner and Associates, I see there's a line item for tattoos.
That's
It's
probably
the
temporary
police
tattoos
Temporary
department, yeah.
tattoos.
for the police.
Is that like a part of the initiation?
We're playing for
process?
Tracy's tattoos back there, yeah.
Tattoo
Now that you two
Forces
are
of
elected
focus.
council members.
You have to get Chaska tattooed
Do a
on your arm
Chaska
now.
tattoo.
I do that really big.
Just making sure, because it was like $600. That's a lot.
I
You
saw
didn't know
that
when you
too.
got on
Like
council, you had to
400.
get a tattoo?
No.
It's like $400. That's like a lot of tattoos.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny, because as I sat and looked through the same thing, I was like, tattoos, and I was like, I bet they're temporary
I
tattoos.
bet they are, but it just I figured I'd just ask just to make sure.
Super popular with the kids.
Nate tried sliding that through, it didn't work, Nate.
Gotta find another plan for my tats.
When you roll
Get the Studio Chaska
sleeve, you're-
logo there.
Right.
Okay, so that's all I got.
Anyone else? Okay, look for a motion to pay the bills.
So moved?
Motion by Councilmember Wang. Second by Councilmember McGraw to pay the bills. Discussion. Nate, will you call roll?
Yes. Councilmember Hatfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard?
Yes.
Councilmember Wong?
Yes.
Councilmember Grau?
Yes.
And Mayor Winchell?
Yes. All right. I just want to, and I probably should have said it earlier, and I've kind of forgot, I want to welcome Taylor to the council. We're gonna jump right into things. We've got a lot of things planned over the next 3 months, I think. And so exciting, so welcome, and welcome back to you, Mike. So now that the swearing in is done, now we finally got a full council, and we can get going, so exciting. So congratulations to both of you, and welcome.
Thank you very much.
With that, I'll start tonight. Other business, we just allow people if they have any calls from constituents or something you want to bring up. So I'll start. I'll give you a break and let you sit. Well, I'll start with.
Oh, me, okay.
Yeah, Princess.
I just wanted, we were invited to the Human Rights Commission meeting that they had in May, and for the complete count that the United States Census is, for the census in 2020, basically. So there was a presentation by, I can't remember what his name was, but from the census, and just about like a complete count committee, and if really presenting, it's an option the city could do, or there's different levels. The county could do it. There's all sorts of, anybody could really put it together. But we would need like the mayor's signature on it or what have you. So, but it basically would just be to kind of reach those, we'll really get it out to everyone that, the census is happening. This is how it's going to happen. You're going to get a piece of mail, or you can go online, and then if you don't answer, someone might come to your door, just so that people know it's happening, kind of the frequently asked questions surrounding it, and really getting out to those harder to reach areas of people groups that maybe don't always respond to the census. And so actually it was really interesting to learn that Chaska has had, I think it was Chaska, or was it Carver County the stat was for? I think it was for Chaska.
Yep.
We've actually had a pretty good, it was 79% in 2000 and then 85% in 2010 that responded to the census. So that's actually really high. I thought it was really high. But basically, they're kind of the Human Rights Commission is, I think, interested, I think it's fair to say, in having a complete count committee. So they have a lot of really good resources. I don't think it would take any like staff time, or it really is like the community grassroots coming together, like people from different areas of the community. It wouldn't necessarily be us or the Human Rights Commission. It could be us, like one of us could be on it or whatever. But I thought that was really interesting. And there's a ton of resources. There's so much like marketing already ready that you just have to like basically put out. So, and the time commitment can be as little as there's a 3-hour training, and then, they could have one meeting. So it is something that we would consider or could consider.
Yeah, one of the things that, so they'll, like in 2010, they'll hit 85% of the people right off the get-go, and then it ends up being, all their time ends up being spent on the 15% that haven't responded. And so really what they look for from the communities, and I think what a committee like this would be able to help with, is to identify those areas that we're pretty sure are going to be difficult to reach. And some of them can be, we were talking with Kevin Ringwald about this. I mean, Brian Jung may get a question on where some of his maintenance crew may have seen people who maybe don't have a home, that are out living in the woods or things like that, we sort of identify for them where are areas that they should really be checking in the community, and give them some of that. And so, thinking about who might be able to really sort of point them in the right direction, I think is really what they're looking for a committee like that. So I know you've been doing some research on it.
Yeah, and I spoke with Kevin Ringwald in our planning department. He let me know that Staff has a very strong working relationship with the U.S. Census Bureau already, and they've been working with them over the last year or maybe even a little bit more to help prepare for the census, understand where Chaska's neighborhoods are, the growth areas that have come online since the last census was occurred. And then at the last census, they were a big part of getting that additional 15%. The 85% that responded on their own, that's not additional work needed there, but the 15% that wasn't accounted for in their initial response, staff through that relationship was able to provide a lot of direction where Chaska was pretty successful in getting that complete count. Now, they're already pursuing, and continuing that relationship leading up to this next census, and they'll have those conversations when the time is right to direct the census workers to different neighborhoods that may be likely candidates for missing counts, or like Matt was saying, areas that we know of, where there's homeless people that are, where they're at, and working with them, directing the census workers to local organizations that would understand, those things as well, like Love Inc. or Launch Ministry. The Carver County CDA groups that are working on a day-to-day basis with those populations that might be harder to reach. But I think in addition to that, there is a way for the Human Rights Commission, I think they're very interested in this, playing a role in marketing the census more generally. So people are aware that it's coming, they understand what it's about, how they will receive the invitation to respond to the census, so that when it arrives in your mailbox, it's not necessarily the first time that you've heard about this thing, and hopefully you've got some familiarity with at least the fact that it's coming, if not more. So I know they're talking about their booth at River City Days as one outlet that they want to do some marketing about the census on, but I think they're real interested in thinking about other ways that they can tap into their networks and their in the community and try to raise awareness that way. So the way that I see it, it could be beneficial to sort of have both things going on simultaneously, where staff can really provide that expert guidance to the U.S. Census workers when they're doing their follow-up, and the Human Rights Commission can provide, their effort towards marketing the census and just more broadly to the community. So that's kind of the direction that I'm intending to lead them down, I guess, when we meet later this month. But if you all have thoughts on that, I'm open and want to share that with them.
I went to the same meeting. It was very informative, like Michaela said. I think what's important is they're going about it a bit differently now that, technology has changed, and instead of filling out a paper form, they're mailing like a slip, it sounds like, that you would go and fill it out online. So, they talked about web security and things along those lines. But I also think in doing that, I think some people that maybe have fears of doing that, I think that might be an area that, where the Human Rights Commission, or like you said, other leaders can help engage people so that they go online and fill out, and they don't have to answer all the questions. They may get a follow-up, but, if you don't want to answer a question on the census in a paper format, you just don't answer it. But, the fear of going online and feeling like you're going to be required to, answer every question, I think that was information that I liked hearing from him. Just because, I don't know if you guys are aware, they're saying that we could lose, a seat in the House, just Minnesota. So I think it's important for us to get counted.
Yeah,
So.
this is a big census for Minnesota. I think the chances of losing a seat are actually relatively good.
Yeah.
And that goes like federal funding goes into it too. So that goes down to the state. So there's lots, there's definitely things at stake to make sure we want to have a complete count and that we have. Yeah, that's kind of what I had.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Michael?
Let's see, I got a few things. So on Saturday the 25th, I actually took a tour with the Chaska Historical Society, so I wanted to give them a shout out. They actually were doing cemetery tours over Memorial Day weekend, which is actually really interesting. There's a lot of World War II and World War I history here in Chaska, and It's one of those things where, you know, it was a small group that was at Mount Pleasant Cemetery, and they did one at St. John's. I was able to attend that one. But it's one of those things where there's a lot of history there, and it's really fascinating to kind of hear the stories and kind of hear about, like, you know, people who are local, families are still tied to the area, and, you know, like, you know, people's, you know, like great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents and things like that, and kind of what they went through. And it's kind of a lot of about engaging your own local history and, you know, what kind of makes this an interesting cultural area, because, you know, everyone came from somewhere else, and, you know, hearing about how they immigrated from different places, whether it was like you know, Sweden or Norway, or coming from Germany or somewhere else. It was, you know, it was a fascinating walk, and I certainly encourage people to kind of keep an ear open, and certainly will mention it here if there's some other things from the Historical Society that they're doing. I know that there's, through, like I mentioned this at the last meeting, from July 11th to November 15th, there's an exhibit about Chaska during World War I and World War II, and the fight overseas at here and at home. So I certainly encourage people to go and visit that, because it's I'm sure this will be really fascinating to anyone who's at all interested in local history. Tuesday 28th, for everyone who's a burrito lover, Chipotle opened, so it kind of rounds out that part of the square there. The interesting question on there is that now that we have Chipotle, Starbucks, and Aldi are open, I remember one of the things that we talked about was the developer was interested in, you know, finishing that before starting to move on to the last section of property, which is sort of the junior box stores over on the east side of Kohl's. Have they started talking about that now that, you know, these developments are finally open?
Well, I think they've been actively trying to find tenants for those locations. The interesting thing, since the landscape has changed so much in retail in the last 4 to 5 years, that I suspect it's not going to be easy for them to find, especially junior box retail. Tends to be the one that we're, you know, that you drive down 494 or drive into Eden Prairie, and you're seeing all these, you know, spaces that are about 30, 40, 50,000 square foot vacant. I would not be surprised if you saw them come back with different concepts for that side of the site, because I think the question of larger retail being viable into the future is a real question.
Yep. Yeah, I was just wondering if they would like.
Which is actually sort of good news for downtown, because I think the smaller retail is much more viable than it used to be. You know, so I think these spaces become a lot easier to work with. Those large spaces are very difficult.
Yeah, because there's not as many opportunities out there, and they're drying up. Saturday, June 1st, there's Fishing with Friends, so I was able to attend it with my son, and it's a great event for anyone with kids who want to expose them to fishing, so certainly highly recommend that for next year. So some things coming up on Tuesday, June 11th at the Chaska Community Center. Attorney General Allyson and Senator Jensen are hosting a hearing on lowering drug prices, and that will be from 6:30 to 8 p.m. So certainly, if you're at all interested in that, that's that's an important issue for you. Certainly encourage people to attend that. So at 6:30 to 8 p.m. on Tuesday the 11th at the Community Center, hosted by Attorney General Allyson and Senator Jensen. Then there's June 18th through 23rd, we have the Women's PGA Championship up there, and I know that there's a number of communications out there about free tickets for the practice rounds for community members. And then right following that, on the 24th, is the Southwest Christian High School's 18th annual golf tournament at the Chaska Town Course. So contact Leslie Robertson if you're interested in attending that. And one last thing. Matt, you and I had talked about the Metro Cities committees, and so do we want to talk about that?
Yeah, so Metro Cities, most probably don't know what Metro Cities is. Metro Cities is sort of like the League of Minnesota Cities in that it basically represents cities' interests at the legislature and different things that we as cities as a whole really need help with lobbying on. And so, but the main focus where League of Minnesota Cities basically represents every city in the state, the metro cities really focuses on those cities in suburban areas. And usually, it typically tends to exclude like Minneapolis and St. Paul because their issues are significantly different than what our issues are. So Metro Cities does have, they're actually indicating that they're looking for people to serve on different committees. And really these committees sort of set up their platform for what they'd go into legislative session next year, really sort of trying to focus on. So if there is an interest from anybody to look at potentially being considered to serve on a Metro City committee, let me know. It's a good opportunity to get involved in city stuff more than just in Chaska, and be able to have a broader impact on sort of what all of us, all the cities in the Twin Cities get impacted by. So I can tell you, there's things like fiscal disparities, which are a big issue for cities like Chaska, where we're a net giver to every other city that doesn't have a robust economic development activity. I think it's about $200,000 a year that we contribute back to a pool that comes from our taxpayers, that goes into a pool to help cities that maybe don't have as robust economic development. So there's those types of issues that are very specific to the Twin Cities. So it's sort of nice to be in a broader picture. I can tell you the mayor's involved. He's a member of the TAB, so that's a Transportation Advisory Board through Met Council, which quite frankly is the group that chooses what projects in the Twin Cities get chosen for getting funding for road construction projects, and which so you can have a much broader impact than just inside these chambers. It can really be an impact on the broader Twin Cities in general. So anybody that has interest in that, just let me know, and I can get you in contact with the right person.
Deadline is really quick.
Is it coming up?
It's coming up.
Yeah.
I didn't catch what it is. And there's 4 different committees too. There's the committees are Transportation and General Government, Municipal Revenues, Metropolitan Agencies, and Housing and Economic Development. I'm thinking because I'm on Southwest Transit, I should probably work with the Transportation and General Government one, especially with that potential $1 million shortfall that we're looking at right now. That I probably want to be aligning myself with that one to see if I can help to steer it for next year.
So Patricia Nauman is the person that's sort of in charge of sort of organizing all this. I'll definitely make sure I get in contact with her tomorrow about you, but if any of the rest of you are interested in considering it, just let me know, and I can make sure to make connections for you. Okay?
And that's all I've got.
What about you meeting with the Met Council chair?
Oh, we had an interesting meeting with the Met Council chair and Minnesota State
Housing
Commissioner,
Commissioner,
Housing Commissioner
Jennifer Ho.
Yep, Jennifer Ho. And so that way had an interesting conversation. This was last week, and it was well attended. Just representatives from a number of other cities within the area. And it was good to hear what their perspectives were on housing and economic development in the area, and certainly the importance of developing a well-rounded housing inventory to make sure that we're covering all the bases across the board. So it was really good, and they had a tour of the Carver Crossings facility as well as the adjacent Southwest Transit station there, and talked about how that impacted Carver. And it was really interesting because a lot of it dispelled a lot of a lot of the rumor, or not rumors, a lot of the preconceptions of what affordable housing is. And for me, this is the first time having been in this building. It's a 3-year-old building, but walked inside, it looked like a luxury townhouse or luxury apartments inside. I mean, it was beautiful, well maintained, everything was well finished. And they said that most residents there, if you didn't know that there were, a lot of them were receiving support, or like it was a lower income housing development, wouldn't know it. And so in fact, they have, I think, 4 units that were dedicated to homeless. They were homeless units. And they said that if you didn't know who they were, you wouldn't even know that they were. It's and they said it's also a great synergy because since it's right next to the Southwest Transit Station, then it allows easy access or transportation to employment. So that way people who live there can just hop on the transit and go. And in addition to that, they said of like 160 or so children who live in that building. I think something like, was it like 80 or something like that go to the elementary school across the parking lot. So, I mean, it's a great benefit to everyone. And the other piece of the puzzle is, which a lot of people ask about, is crime rates. And he said that crime rates have not changed one iota since that was built. It's like zero change.
The other one that tends to be an argument a lot of times is property values going down. And Brent Merrick, the administrator there, shared with me, they did a little study on market values in the area, and I forget what they went up, but they went up pretty substantially since that project has actually been built, which makes sense because, I mean, you look at the whole area is developing like crazy. And so, it hasn't stifled their market values within that area. So it's been actually sort of, I think, an interesting case study because it really, a lot of times, they went really from having nothing to something. Where, in a place like Chaska, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on and stuff. So it's hard to sort of pinpoint what the effects of one individual project are. It's a lot easier to pinpoint it there because that was their first project that they worked on. And I think they've felt that it's been real successful for them.
How did she feel about Chaska, or how did they rate? You said that they kind of talked about affordable housing, and what was their perspective of Chaska's?
I think they were asking a lot of questions. I don't think they really, had an indication of how they felt about the area. I think they were just want to get input from us as community members.
I can quantify it for you though. Sure. So the Met Council actually comes out with what they call LHOA scores each year. And so it's a rating of how much, what you have for affordability in your community. And the reason that they do that is that they use that as a criteria factor for livable communities grants each year, which we've been a recipient of a number of ones. So for like Cloverfield, a number of things out in Cloverfield, the landing down here, we've been a recipient of probably $2 to $3 million in just the last few years. So that's a big criteria in the scoring. Out of a possible 100, we got 100% this last cycle through, and we've been 97 to 100% for the last 20 years. We've been sort of, we've received all the possible scores that we could, which is not typical for, especially an outer ring suburban community.
Yeah, it really wasn't focusing on, it kind of focused on the Carver crossings, but the rest of it just really focused on talking about, why is there challenges with that building? Why, and that's where it came out about the crime rates and the property values and things like that. And we really got into a conversation, I kind of brought up about social media, about how fast people get organized, and everybody across the room all of a sudden starts shaking their head and realizing that is something, and there's quick and fast fear that's put out there, then you can never get rid of that fear. So we talked about that, but it's just overall it was just really talking in general about things, and that the governor's intention is to try to do more things to try and find ways to make more affordable housing available to everyone. So
that's that's one of the sort of realities as you go through some of those projects is, and you sort of framed it right at the last meeting, talk about the fear of the unknown. And you definitely see that in some projects, and Carver Crossings was just a prime example.
Yeah, Brent, I mean, when I brought that up, Brent just went, oh my God, yeah.
It was, to be honest, it was brutal. It was a brutal process, and I think, unfortunately, it brings out the worst in people. And
but it's a fear.
Yeah, it's a fear, and it's a real fear of the unknown, and so sometimes it really helps to be able to go back after the fact to these projects and say, okay, the things that people were really afraid of didn't necessarily manifest themselves.
All right.
I just had one, I mentioned the map, but I'll bring it up here, and there's a couple of things. The Hawk system is still down on Chaska Boulevard. Matt didn't say he had an update for that, but we'll work on that. But more importantly, I will point out that I would encourage people who are driving there to pay attention to people crossing there. If it's any indication of how much people are paying attention, the fact that the pedestrian crossing sign is basically hit so many times that it's flat on the ground and looks pretty damaged is a little concerning for about the people who potentially could cross there. So please pay attention. It's in the middle of the road. You shouldn't hit that piece, but it is
But it's
probably,
pretty narrow for truckers there, so
It
it
is.
is, it's a little tight.
yeah, and it's definitely could maybe used to be propped back up. It looks like it's ripping out of the ground there. So I'll just bring that up. Like I said, I drive by that twice a day, Monday through Friday, so definitely take notice as it continues to lean further down, so.
Why haven't you jumped down and put it back up?
Well, I'm afraid that
They'll be
Yeah, what she said.
I'll be leaning down.
Some man of action.
So, but hopefully we'll get that fixed and work on that system again. The only other question I had, there was rumors that the river was gonna crest below where MnDOT would close 41, and we didn't, and then I was worried because we were supposed to get more rain and that didn't happen. Is that seeming to be trending at this point? Now, it has never gotten good. It's never, that water's been there a long time.
At this point, we don't think it's gonna go over the top of 41.
I drove it the other day, there's at least 3 feet yet, so
Yeah.
we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, the original report said it was like 6 inches, gonna crest 6 inches short of where MnDOT usually closes it. But that was supposed to crest, I think, last Tuesday.
I can tell you if it did get close, it's probably close enough where they don't remove Jersey barriers, they don't do all that stuff that really makes it tough to reopen the road quickly. But I don't think it's going
They
to
would
close.
close at the last minute and open as soon as they can. I had heard that too,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, I was just curious, because that always catches people's attention.
I don't think the forecasters are as good as they are predicting as they were 10 years ago. Because whatever number they put out there, that number was spot on. It's not the case anymore.
You're talking about flood forecasting?
Yes.
Yeah, and one of the real challenges has been the amount of urban runoff now that occurs here, is that there's so much paved impervious surface that water gets to the river faster than it did in the past.
All right.
Me?
Councilmember Hubbard, you are up.
So at this time, I don't have any constituent issues because I haven't really, I door knocked and I answered the questions I had. I emailed to Matt or Nate and followed up with those people. So I don't know if they need to be presented here necessarily.
Oh, this is just if you have
Okay.
something that's of concern
Well,
or a comment. Or...
No, I'm a Waconia Rotarian, and Jason Camrood, although it was Carver County Sheriff's, he spoke, so I got to hear some of the initiatives in that regard, which was kind of interesting and enlightening. So just in the regard of, the cadet training that they'd set up with Hennepin Technical College, that was really fascinating, and the mental health piece in regards to moving someone over to the dispatch eventually, and then maybe even having them come out on call. So I know it's a little bit different from the Chaska police, but it's very informative.
The one thing I did share with Councilmember Hubbard is that we still have one committee. We each have sort of committee appointments. The mental health task force is the last one that we have to fill, and Councilmember Hubbard said that she was actually interested in doing that. So,
to oblige on
two things.
Bro, I don't even know that's Carver County, right?
Yeah, it's Rod Franks at Carver County. But we have a couple, we have to deal with the appointment to our electric commission, things like that. So we'll be bringing that back probably at the next meeting.
Okay.
Otherwise, just ready to get going and excited. And my mom is in the audience. I don't know if I can thank my mother here at a meeting. It was it probably felt like a long time to you guys, but for me, being in the campaign part of it, it was very fast. Really didn't get door knocking until the beginning of April, and the weather wasn't always conducive, being turbulent spring, like typical Minnesota fashion. My mother hit the pavement with me. I think between the two of us, we had to have hit over 1,200 houses or something like that.
Jeez, good job.
In about a 5-week period of time. I mean, it was a separate, almost full-time job. But why I mention that is, it was a very rewarding and valuable experience. I wouldn't trade that for anything, even if the election results had turned differently. I felt very engaged. I felt like I could have people see my face, even if they wanted to take my literature and close the door. But, you know, the ones that, you know, I asked questions and I followed up or just engaged with people, I felt like that was really valuable. So I'm really happy that this happened, and I have that foothold coming into it because I just think that was so important. So, and I just want to thank everybody else who helped out, because it wasn't just the two of us. There was a handful of others that helped as well with everything. So I'm really appreciative and of the city of doing this. So, and I'm glad to be here.
All right.
Good. All right, Nate.
Couple things. June 17th, we will be changing City Hall business hours. It's currently 7:30 to 4:30. We're going to change that to 8 o'clock to 4:30. Presently, that 7:30 to 8 o'clock time frame, we don't see a lot of people coming in. Exception to the rule when someone is coming in looking for service at that time. And so by making this change, this allows us to make some staffing changes that we've been contemplating to hopefully improve customer service both at the first floor front desk and the second floor front desk, and also give a little bit more resource attention to utility billing and the processing that they need to do during the time that they're here. So it just gives us a little bit more flexibility, and hopefully results in, while it's 1/2 hour less, hopefully the time that we are here is a higher quality experience for people. So utility billing, that's if someone does need to come at 7:30, you still can drop off your bill in the drop-off box that's in the parking lot. You can pay online. You can mail in your bill. So there's still multiple ways to pay your utility bill if you're tied to a 7:30 time.
Do we know, have a lot of people switched over to the paying online with the credit cards and all that? Has that been taking off?
I think that's a majority of people at this point. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't know, Matt, if you've seen that recently, but that is a primary way.
I can tell you anecdotally, typically we see very few people come to the desk unless it's shut-off day.
Mm-hmm.
That is typically the majority. There's some people that really have it as part of their routine, that they might come downtown and they're doing things, they've been doing it for years, and so you'll see some of that. But the majority of the people that we see at the front desk is on shut-off day.
Because that was, like, Councilmember Geisler and Councilmember Schultz were pushing hard to get those things through, so that was.
Yeah,
It's not easy, it sounds really easy to let's just switch over and do that, but it's, in the real world, it takes a lot longer than thought, but
So what time
glad
is the-
that's working.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So what time is the library open usually?
10.
10? Okay, yeah, and so, yeah, and there's nothing else. So, yeah, so you guys open the front doors and then the library would open later?
I can tell you one thing that we're actually sort of contemplating. This is coming actually from the city of Eagan, where Marshall was the community center director there. They're going through some sort of shifting and staffing too, especially when it comes to like front desk. And one of the things that we've sort of toyed with is being able to provide more of our general city services from the community center front desk. So that if people, wanted to do a transaction at 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night, that our front desk staff up there would actually have the capability of doing that type of stuff. He said they did that in Eagan and it really worked well. Because in essence,
A challenge to do, or not really? It's more training.
well, it's training. It's also, we'd have to sort of restructure the way we do things there, but we're sort of going through that process anyway. And so it's definitely worth us looking at because, and we're trying to really sort of integrate our services across the city that, you're not just dealing with Park and Rec when you're dealing with Park and Rec services. You're really dealing with the city is to try to bring more of those services then, I mean, the community center is open from 5 a.m. until 10 p.m. So really, you're covering almost every hour, that people have some kind of access 24 hour, or not 24 hours, but a lot of the hours to be able to have a face-to-face contact. So I'm not saying we're there yet, but it's something that we're exploring.
I love that idea because, I mean, people don't usually come to City Hall just because, and they also go to the library, but on the other hand, there's a lot of people who go to community center for just to work out or for kids stuff or other parties or events or other things. So, that's a huge, could be a huge convenience for a lot of people.
Well, and also potentially a different way for people to interact with the city from, different services that we provide. So we're sort of going through this whole sort of customer service period, sort of look at things, and there's a number of components that go with it. What Nate's talking about is really initially with our front desk sort of first line contact that's happening up here, and we're really sort of restructuring that to be really what we want it to be from a customer service experience. But I really sort of see that sort of filtering out into the other services that we have across the city too.
I have another one that maybe we could put in the customer service category to some extent. So this is an ordinance change that Denise and I have been talking about that could help maybe streamline some process a little bit, looking at the solicitors, peddlers, and transient business ordinance. Currently today, anyone who's within those groups needs to come in, apply for a license. Denise does some work on her end to prepare that, and it goes to all of you for final approval. So solicitors would be folks who are going door to door, talking about services that they provide, trying to sell their services. Peddlers would be groups who actually have things that they're selling, objects. They're going door to door. Right now, today, our primary user of that is the ice cream trucks. So they've got
Weenie wagon.
and the weenie wagon.
We approved the weenie wagon.
Transient businesses, think of the food trucks. So that's a business that can set up shop at any given location, do their thing for a day or two or whatever the case may be, and then they're off to another location. So those are ones that we get. Sometimes they're more last second because there might be a party going on in the example of a food truck, and those things are kind of coming together as things evolve. And in those situations, having to go to council puts staff in a tough situation trying to accommodate that request. So
Let's just say, for instance, there was a new brewery in town.
Maybe, yeah,
Maybe
as an
he had a
example.
food truck that was
and maybe they're
planning
going to have
on
a grand
coming.
opening, and we're really excited about that.
Yeah.
And we want to support them.
And the food truck didn't show up.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah. And so, one way to speed up that process and what we've been thinking about is, could that be an administrative approval? It's very infrequent where one comes forward and it comes to council and you're denying that request. So, would it make sense to make that an administrative type approval? And maybe
Well, and
there's
that we
ways-
create more criteria that they have to follow, and making sure that as they go through the process that they're meeting that criteria. Because, I mean, you mentioned the ice cream truck, sort of joking about that, but it probably would have been nice for them to be around this last weekend.
Could have been.
Yeah, I mean, it was
I don't know
warm
what
and-
their plan. I know they were in Laconia.
Yeah.
I followed their Facebook page.
But I mean, they had to wait until they actually got approval at the council meeting tonight, and so they missed the whole weekend of being able
Oh,
to
as a
do that.
business, that's
Yeah.
a,
Yeah,
ooh,
I
that's a
mean,
sad opportunity.
because really you guys make sure the checks and that they're good anyways, so and we're just putting a final stamp on it. So I don't see any reason why that, barring, as long as it meets all of the standards we have to do,
Because when was the last time you remember them ever being something other than consent agenda? Ice cream truck or approval? Never, I mean.
Well, and the reality is that it's not the people that come through the licensing process that are the issue. It's the people who don't go through the licensing process that are the issue. And so Nate and I had even sort of talked about that maybe when we get to that time of year, we'll put out some kind of a special thing. And we talk about it here every once in a while at council is, if people run into people who don't have licenses, call the police. You know, that, we don't really want people who don't have licenses, because there's a reason that they're not coming to the city and trying to get approvals, because they're probably not the type of business we want in the city. You know, we can still do that type of public education, but the ones who are coming back year after year for these, they're the ones that actually, I think, add some value to the community, and so you sort of like to see them come back, because people like them, that otherwise they wouldn't come back.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, like I said, I have no concerns with kind of the administrative side, but if there is concern, maybe if it's for new, never had one in the city before, maybe those come. I don't have a real strong concern either way, but I think they're just more information.
I don't know that we've ever in my years discussed one.
It's really tough to not approve them if they don't have a history.
Right.
If they have a history, usually we don't let them get to the point where they're on the agenda, so.
At which point there's kind of already an administrative process in that we're just pretty much just.
Yeah,
it's
there
really just
are
delegating that
there are
ability to
people
somebody.
that we are discouraging from applying for permits because they have been not good business people in town. So a lot of times you guys just aren't even seeing those because, you know, because we're gonna
That's
end
what I
up
mean,
having.
you're doing all the weeding out and
Yeah.
checking anyway,
Yeah.
so.
You know, and we've talked about, you know, at least in the case of solicitors and peddlers permits, creating a space on our website that would list out all the organizations that hold that license. So if someone, you know, is approached at their house, they have a place that they can go and do that check and see, you know, whether in fact there is a license there. And then also have information on there if there's not a license, what do you do? You know, who should you be calling and how do you report that? What's your response? So, you know, that's another added thing that we've been talking about, putting that in place as well.
Okay, anything else?
That's all I've got.
All right, thanks. Luke?
Nothing about Florence?
They don't want it public yet.
Oh, they don't.
No.
No, I haven't.
The only thing I have is just a real quick one. I should have mentioned under 7L, so the no wake zone on Lake Bavaria. We're actually going to be we're working with the county to bring back more criteria for when no wake zone should be put in place. Because ideally, the county ultimately has authority to place that over a lake. Ideally, that would have been done last week. They went a whole weekend this weekend where there probably was some damage done to shoreline, docks, those types of things, both in Waconia and on Lake Bavaria. And so to avoid last minute sort of things, create criteria for, you know, what elevation would it be at, how long does it have to be down at a certain elevation
just
before they
automatically
take
kicks
off
in?
the no wake zone. Because this, I mean, there's certain times when there just needs to be a no wake zone or else it can create damage. So you'll probably see something coming back that is more permanent than that.
Okay.
Yep, that'd be great.
All right. Anything else?
No.
All right. I just, a couple things you talked about, the chair. The wind turbine, people are probably noticing that it hasn't
Oh,
been
yeah,
spinning.
yeah.
We got it in our bi-weekly that it's really down for maintenance, so, don't be alarmed. It's just, it's time, would we say it is?
10 years.
10 years old already,
Yeah.
so, it'll be down, and we have 12 of them, so are they all probably getting it?
Yep.
So, it would just have to maybe wait a little bit till it's our turn, so.
I actually think we might be one of the first ones because we're actually, if you look at all the communities, we actually have probably the most visible
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's very
turbine of
visible.
any of the communities, which their whole goal was to be an educational type of thing. And so, you know, being the fact that's one of the first things you see coming into town, I think they want to get that one up and running as soon as possible.
So anyway, so that's why it's not running, so. And then the training, yeah, we talked about the medication on the 17th. And that is open to the public, so anyone is welcome. Fishing with Friends, I was there as well. Got to do an early, just a little bit of a welcome, but I talked to the organizers. They had 80 kids registered, and they had 17 on a waiting list. So it is very strong. and it was good to see so many people there. Unfortunately, I couldn't hang around on Saturday very long, but good turnout and a lot of people, a lot of volunteers. Like I told those kids, I said, it's the happiest group of people that you ever want to work with. They're always just happy to help and having a lot of fun. So always fun to go to that one. And then just lastly, I probably didn't mention it at our last council meeting, but I just want to reach out and say thank you to all the voters that did actually go out and vote. May elections aren't always on people's minds, but at least we want to do is to say thank you to everyone that did go out and do their duties. So that it was greatly appreciated here. Even though I've been rather vocal that it wasn't the best turnout, we still appreciate the people that did make that effort. So thank you to all of those folks. So with that, and then on, I don't know, did anyone mention this? Next week, we have our next council meeting. We start at 4:30 at the fire station.
Yep,
We talked
that'll
about
be-
that already?
I can't remember if we talked
I don't know
about it,
either.
but yeah.
I don't-
We did, but I
You?
don't think we haven't mentioned that tonight yet, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
we can talk about it.
so now that we have our council permanent for a year and a half, we're finally gonna have that opportunity to get together and have someone from the League of Cities come out and just talk about the do's and don'ts, and things like that. So, and we're having all of our commissions, so we're gonna meet at the fire station in the training room, and then we'll have to get out of there by 6:40 and get down here and get to the council meeting. So have your running shoes on. We'll be bouncing from one place to the next. That's not interfering with the fire department? Or are they going outside that night?
No, he said they don't need it till 7.
No, okay.
And that's the big joint session with everybody.
Yeah, everybody will be
Yeah, all the
there.
commissions are invited. and-
Yeah, I was gonna spend a little bit of time too talking, cause everybody, commissions, council, everything is really new, is sort of talking about sort of the vision, mission, goals and stuff like that. Cause I think that's gonna, we will, and the trick is always finding the right date, but someday we're gonna find a date that works for everybody, and we're going to have our retreat. And so that's gonna be a big focus of the retreat, is really getting back to sort of the basics of vision, mission, goals. What are the things that we're really gonna focus on over the next couple of years and stuff. So I thought that might be a good opportunity with everybody, including the commissions there, to really sort of,
Or are you gonna bring all the commissions?
all the commissions at the training on the 17th.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought for the retreat.
No.
Yeah,
For
'cause
that, just as, just so
the retreat
everybody
is-
sort of hears, the stuff that, that we already sort of have in place. So.
For here, the retreat would be the council and department heads who would go on, or we usually just go up to Oak Ridge. It's a day, maybe a day and a half, but, we're out of there by 4:30, so no overnights. I think they did a while ago. And then well, let's let that go. And then before we go, do you want to maybe just give us a touch on where we are with the equity training?
Yeah.
And what's happening with that, if you would?
Yep, so the YMCA has had an opportunity to be able to go up, and they sat in, and the school district had their first meeting of their diversity task force a couple Thursdays ago. From that, they also met with some of the school district personnel, including the superintendent. They wanted to make sure that they really sort of were understanding sort of the full picture of things. And from that, they're coming back with a recommendation or a proposal that they're gonna be making this Friday to the task force of people that we had, some from Carver School District, Chaska, some of the parents that have been involved in this issue, to make that presentation back to that group this Friday. The hope is that it'll be something that can come out of that group to each of our governing bodies. So come back to the council here, the council in Carver, the school board, at the school, with some common direction of how to move forward with the work that they think is important for us to do.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any questions up here? Otherwise, last call. If I don't hear anything, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Motion by Councilmember Hubbard. Second. Second by Commissioner Wang to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same side. We are adjourned. We'll see you in 2 weeks.